Imagine an airy workspace that feels like a modern oasis, or a cafe that's cosy and inviting, or a vibrant shopfront that draws customers in. Whatever space you're dreaming up, the IKEA Business Network is here to help you create a better everyday life at work. Join the IKEA Business Network for free and instantly access benefits including a one-on-one with an interior designer, member discounts and perks for your staff and family. So go on, join the IKEA Business Network now at ikea.com.au/business.
Hi, thanks for joining us. This episode of First Act was recorded on location at Sean Christie David's restaurant, Kabul Social. We apologise in advance for the clinging, clanging and clinking. But we do hope that you enjoy this fantastic founder's origin story. Hello and welcome to another episode of First Act, the podcast where we dive into the inspirational origin stories of Australia's leading entrepreneurs, business owners and influencers. I'm one of your hosts, Tess Busby, and my fun fact for the day is my favourite home-cooked meal is mushroom stroganoff. Something about the creamy, the paprika, the mushroom. It's not beef stroganoff because I don't eat meat, but I like the meatiness of the mushroom.
Well, Sess, I'm going to need to come over to your place because that sounds absolutely delicious.
Anytime, Adam.
Please invite me. I am Adam Barb, Sess's co-host for First Act, and my favourite home-cooked meal is my mum's cheesy asparagus tart. Hi, Mum. I had it a couple of weeks ago, and I would love to have it more often. She puts like chips on top of it, so crisps, not hot chips, but it's just that lovely, and very, very cheesy. You know, I know when people hear asparagus, not everyone's a fan, but my mum just makes it just incredible. So that's very comforting to me. Now, it is fitting that we're talking about food today, as today's guest knows a thing or two about delivering delicious dinners. Sean Christie David is the founder and CEO of impact-based hospitality group Plate It Forward, which is trying to make the world a better place through food. The mission started with his Sri Lankan restaurant Colombo Social in Enmore, Sydney. It's a place where asylum seekers and refugees find not just a job, but a community and a new start. Today, we're going to explore how Sean went from banking to building a food movement and business that's changing lives. Sean, welcome to First Act.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Now, Sean, let's start at the beginning. What's your first food memory?
Yeah, so my first food memory is actually many years ago when we would have spicy food to get our mouths accustomed to stuff. So it was a little bit of chili in the gums, which is really interesting. But I will, if you don't mind, I'd love to share my favorite food.
Yeah, tell us.
My favorite dish is my mum's biryani. It's like chicken biryani. It's laid in spices. It's an incredible dish. And I remember spending 2 years in the UK, and you can get food, but there's nothing like your mum's food. So I went home, 8 a.m. flight, touchdown. I had 3 massive plates of spicy chicken biryani for breakfast, and that will always hold a special place in my heart.
So, Sean, it's great that you've mentioned your mum because she's obviously a fantastic cook and you've used a lot of her recipes for Colombo Social. You've tweaked them all for commercial kitchen use. And these days, thousands of people go to that restaurant of yours. They gobble up her food. It's delicious. They love it. But when you were growing up, that really wasn't the case. Like you've mentioned in an interview how at school people would make fun of your food. You'd chuck your lunches out. You'd be kind of ashamed of eating this food that was a bit different. And I'm sure that that's an experience that a lot of Australians that are first-generation Australians can really relate to, that kind of feeling of otherness and difference when they were growing up. So how do you think that impacted you?
Yeah, it's so typical of that first-generation migrant experience. I had about 700 people reach out through various platforms from Bosnia, Malaysia, Africa, as their first generation experience. It said the same thing after the article went live. So it's a common thing that we all experience. And how it shaped me was in all ways to do what I do. And And I think it's the important storytelling that can happen through food, which is why it's deeply powerful and crucial. I got a bad Google review the other day, and the guy's like, "Your food's not Sri Lankan enough." Um, and I'm like, "Well, it's not meant to be. It's meant to be my experience as someone that's grown up in Australia and Sri Lanka, and how those two worlds have influenced me." We get told, and for me or for people from Lebanon or wherever it is, you're not Lebanese enough, but you're not Australian enough either. And they want us to be something. And I think that we've got our own definition as first generation migrants. We've got our own storytelling. We've got our own experiences and our own subculture. And food is the greatest way to express that subculture, which is the way that we walk between many lives and embrace it and have our own food styles around that. So it's from embarrassment to really and that dal sandwich is so pivotal in the coming of age, if you want to call it, and the embracing the world. So what I would used to be really really ashamed of, and it stunk, and to going out there and serving it to hundreds of people each week with pride and with joy. That's a real turnaround for me, which is that feeling of embracing it.
And as you say, I guess you mentioned the Google review, that negative review kind of like sticks in your mind for like negative stuff sticks in your mind more than the hundreds and hundreds of people who you might come through each day and just have a really good experience. They eat, they go, and then they comment to each other, "Oh, that was a really good sandwich." I love that. You hear that a lot more. You hear the negative. So that is, I'm sure a lot of business owners can relate to that. Sean, you mentioned an article before. Can you tell us a little bit more about the article that you were talking about with when you heard lots of experiences?
Australian Story. So it was
Yeah.
the Australian Story that aired on ABC about 2 months ago, where we were just overwhelmed by how many people had experienced things. And while it was, the off-menu Sean Chris David Australian Story, what I was hoping to do, and I didn't know it was going to be like well received as it was by so many people, but I wanted to share what so many of us had spoken about but couldn't articulate, what so many of us experienced, and what so many of us have gone through from that embracing and loving Australia. It's the world's greatest country, but still having ties to your home country. I look the way I look. My mum sounds the way she sounds. We eat the way we eat, but I also don't feel that I have to. I remember my parents had to give up their Sri Lankan passports to become Australian citizens, and so many people had to do that up until recently. But you can't deny what your background and heritage is, and I don't think you should be embarrassed or ashamed of it. And you can still love your home country, or what I don't even have as my home country, but really enjoy and appreciate the joys of Australia as well. So I think that's a real nice area to be in, where we feel Australian, we feel connected, but we also know that our cultural heritage is something that we're proud of as well.
I did see that Australian Story episode, but it's just lovely to hear that the article, and online you get to hear that immediate feedback from people who really like where your story is resonating with them. I'm interested to know, kind of taking it back to earlier, after leaving school, okay, you initially pursued a career in finance. That's a very different world to where you're at now. But casual racism also reared its head there. How did your experiences in those environments kind of influence your approach to wanting to kind of do something that is around social responsibility and kind of inclusion?
Yeah. I mean, I'm super lucky to have the name Sean Chrissy David. I'm super lucky to sound the way I sound. So you get me on a phone interview without the context of the video, and you wouldn't know what I look like. And you wouldn't. I walked into my very first job interview, and they're like, Sean Chrissy David, and my brother, his name's Aaron Chrissy David actually as well, and he had the same thing. But they're like, what? No, Sean Chrissy David, and they look at me, I'm like, yeah, that's me. And that kind of shaped a lot of the stuff. I was the only brown person in my area on the floors that we were at, and they let you know that. They let you know that I wasn't private school educated. I wasn't North Shore. The standard back in the day, that was the standard fight. That what do they call it, the finance pros or whatever they are.
Yeah, finance bro. Yeah,
Yeah.
looking for a guy in finance.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah. Do not have blue eyes, and do you know? It was very much you knew that you were out of place. You knew that you didn't, sit in the same circles. My dad was a mechanic. Their dads worked in the similar kind of fields. So we didn't have that head start that we had. And what it did was, I suppose that for many, many years, it was anger. Anger that I knew what I could deliver. I knew my skill sets, and I knew that I had something to offer, but I was always overlooked. I was always kind of like said no to, and that frustrated me because there was something to give to the organisations, and I think that frustration led what I would say to a lot of anger to now why what I do is unveiling and unleashing the potential that is so often forgotten or overlooked and unheard. I have engineers, I have doctors, I have pilots, I have the chief economist for the Central Bank of Ukraine, and they're not given the chances that they deserve. And I think I advocate for them. I'm a lucky ambassador for their voices and their stories. I get to go to places and say, do you realize that we're missing so much of an opportunity to leverage their skill sets, their diversity in thought, their thought leadership, and their deep levels of experience that can allow this country that they want to contribute to, they want to be part of, they want to feel connected to, they're so grateful to be here. Let's unveil them. Probably the smartest guy that you'll meet today might be your Uber driver. Do you know? And we don't let them live up to their full potential. So what I see is my key responsibility is going out there and saying, hey, let's embrace them and let's bring them in. If we're talking about businesses, let's get them in there. It's Google Translate that allows us to have conversations. That's how I converse. But just so many skills are there that we could leverage.
Yeah, you're so right, because people come over here, they're engineers, they're doctors, but then their skills are not transferable because, it's a different type of degree or you need this qualification, when it's exactly the same learning, but you don't have the right letters behind your name when you live here.
Correct.
It's just ridiculous. Yeah. There's this great wealth of talent that, as you say, is just being completely ignored, and none of their talent is being leveraged when it completely should be.
Yeah, my dad came over in the 80s and as you dig deep in, people ask me for my why, and it only shapes as you progressively talk about things, I think, and there's always been on my subconscious. My dad had to go back into TAFE after like 20 years of a very, very successful career. They're like, you've got to go back in. He went back in and he taught the class because he knew more than the teachers. It's like, well, what is the point of this? He was just as angry as I was when he was going through the same similar kind of things. He's like, mate, I know what I'm doing. But he had to go get this piece of paper that he ended up pretty much doing himself and writing himself. Yeah.
Crazy. So what would you say was the turning point for you there? The tipping point that led you to go, I'm not the finance bro, this banking career is rubbish, I want to do something different with my life?
I mean, the turning point where I knew it wasn't for me was when I got a call from a client that again, very successful man, and a very big portfolio. And he called up and he said, can you believe they voted an N into the presidency for America, and dropped the word? And he obviously had no idea who he was talking to. We've never met in person. And again, the phone voice versus the, watching this show about a call center, and there's, the white voice. And the white voice is on when you're talking to clients. You speak a lot differently. And I'm like, oh, man. I told people, and they're like, oh, yeah, don't worry about, like, he's massive and he's got, like, X in his portfolio. So we just kind of ignore that. And I don't really think we should ignore that and condone that kind of behavior. I don't think that it's appropriate that he says that to anybody. If this was another broker or another person, that would have been like a laugh for them. And the fact that this like really upset me was kind of fodder for them. And yeah, so that's when I knew that it wasn't really my area to be in anymore.
Mm. So then, where do you go from there? What was the moment that made you come up with the idea for Colombo Social? Then, how did that first come to you?
Oh, this took years and years and years. So I went to the UK. I did a huge project with the NHS, automating a whole heap of things for them, which took me 2 years. Came back and I met a really cool dude called Norman Swan from the ABC. Really liked him. He was building this digital out of home TV channel. And we started to dig into his why, which was incredibly powerful, and I really resonated with me, which was the power of like preventative health and the power to communicate and have better conversations with your GP when you're most receptive. It was very smart, and I loved it. And then I kind of worked on a sub side to that, which was the Aboriginal Health Television Network, and building with all our Indigenous communities across Australia a platform for them to talk about their health in a way that was deeply powerful. So it was 7 years after that moment that kind of built me to different careers, and the work setting up the Aboriginal Health Television Network will always go down as something so incredible. But I wasn't Indigenous, so I left the day that it got announced by the ministers. And then I went back to the things that had always been special to me, which was utilize. My mum would always say, "You're not special, you're lucky." So utilizing that privilege of being born here, raised here, educated here, and had a good career to help others who didn't have those opportunities. And that's then went back to what was the time where my mum was embraced and we were embraced and everyone was accepted, and that was always through food. So the formulation was to build a venue that had my mum's food at the core and center. My mum's social advocacy and her work of education. My mum was a childcare teacher, education, employment opportunity embedded through the whole thing. But then, like with the restaurant, and what it does is talk about that funky first generation person. Not just me, but so many that have fusion food and hip hop cocktails, cool fit outs, cool venue, cool vibe, which wasn't the authentic Sri Lankan restaurant that everyone would have expected. But it's not. It's like our restaurant for us. So that's how it all started.
It's pretty awesome that you've got this thread of, I mean, you mentioned it, but like you mentioned before, storytelling is a really big part of what you do, and it's a part of the stories in your life, and the stories, and when you think about generations and you think about the experiences of immigrants, asylum seekers, refugees, it's those stories that are passed down between generations, and the way that food tells those stories as well. That's a really core part of your mission. And I'm interested to know about how you came to that idea of going, right, I can employ refugees and asylum seekers as a really, like, that can be a core part of how this social enterprise works. Like, why did that become such a key thing for you?
Owning a business is a massive responsibility, but B, it's a huge privilege. Do you know? Like, wow, you get to run an idea that you think is cool and get it out there into the world, but you have an enormous level of responsibility in your day-to-day actions to be able to do something that far extends beyond just a business. And I think when you're looking at your staffing, that's where you can really, and that's what my mum's kind of influence had heavily kind of geared me towards, was do something with the responsibilities and the power that you have. And the power to me was the ability to be an employer, the ability to employ people. And I suppose where we sat was always looking at those people who look like me but didn't get those chances. And hospitality is always seen as like an entry level job for when I'm in uni. I waited tables when I was at uni, or I did this and I was a bartender or whatever it was. And I think it was that knowledge as well that we can set people's up for their career. Now, with hospitality, you get to interact with people daily, so your English gets better. You get to share stuff over food, so you can do some storytelling in their words, and you get to express who you are. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you wear a hijab or you've got heaps of tattoos, or like you're just able to express yourself through the venues, and we don't hold anyone back from that stuff. So I think that acceptance, that ability to grow, and really leverage that beautiful customer that we have, which is so kind. They get it, they understand it, they don't compromise on it because of it. We don't want people to compromise and say, "Oh, we're so bad, so I'm sick, so we're going to let that slide." No, it's constantly pushing ourselves so that we can be the best as well. So that was a big part of why we did it.
Well, we've got to thank your mum for a lot here, don't we?
Get her on this podcast. She's a lot better than I am.
Yeah, well, she's obviously instilled a real sense of community in you as a person, Sean. And I guess there's the element you built Number. I mentioned before, Played It Forward is a hospitality group. So you have Colombo Social, you have Kabul Social, Kiev Social. There's going to be social everywhere on every corner if you keep going as you are. So take it slow, mate. But there's obviously challenges that come up along the way as you're trying to kind of, for want of a better word, kind of scale this concept. As you're trying, you're kind of growing. You're growing. You started as a seed, and you're growing to something bigger. What kind of hurdles challenge you personally?
Oh, mate, just 25 minutes ago, just before we jumped on, we got some devastating news from shout out to JLL for your heartlessness, in saying that they've given up Kabul Social, and tendered it out with 4 weeks' notice. And I've got to go deliver the bad news that we're out of the site. So that's a hurdle that we've got to get through. That's devastating. So I'm going to have to break news to 6 very experienced women who have been gearing towards their own entrepreneurship and businesses, that we probably won't be able to have a job for them because of that. So yeah, that's our current hurdle that we face.
That's really unconscionable. They just decided on a whim to chuck you out.
Yeah, they called me 6 months ago and said we're planning to do this. Never phoned me back, never said anything. And then when I tried to call them, tried to email and set something up, they never got back to me. And then they sent me the words was, "We have some great news to share with you. You are out of your tenancy. We have given you 4 weeks unless you want to vacate earlier." No phone call back, no email back, no response. So yeah, that's super disappointing. That organisations like that are huge, put profits over people and their community. We feed people in Afghanistan through that venue. We employ women who would never ever have had a job. They've bought cars, they've bought houses. They've got financial independence, financial security because they've been employed full time for years, at really good salaries and at really good rates, and that stops because of that. So yeah, that is probably the most heartbreaking thing that we've had to deal with for a long time now. And it was corporate decisions without engaging in a consultation with us, without having that. Fair enough, like decisions can get made, and talk us through it, but the lack of heart and empathy, in a very cold email, is really, really heartbreaking. Really heartbreaking.
Sean, it breaks my heart to hear that. I can't stand to hear when kind of corporate greed can kind of just ignore what social good something is bringing to a community and the impact of what you're doing and how that has crossed not just in these in your employees' lives, but in all the people that enjoy your food. Like that is, I'm kind of speechless actually. Yeah.
I will find work for these women. They're very dear to me. They're very important, and I know their families. I know what they go through. I know the value that happens from employing them, because they go and support families here. They go and support families in Afghanistan. Their families are fleeing horrible circumstances or dealing with things back home. And that money goes back to supporting communities in Afghanistan on top of the work that we do. And I think it's the nature of what happens and the beauty that happens from that is that so many people benefit, so many people, and there's beneficiaries that we don't even know, but we know they're getting something out of it. And I think for where we sit as a community, it needs the whole community to rally behind it, and that is your everyday customer who walks in there and just treats our staff with a smile and purchases the meal. It's the people that treat us with the dignity that we deserve, but it's also the layers of everybody to play their collective part for the world to be a better place.
So sad. And just the suddenness of the decision, it's just awful. It actually reminds me of the whole pandemic thing, all the restaurants suddenly getting shut down, everybody getting out of their job, hospitality like in ruin. And obviously that was a super challenging time for you. But that's when you got approached to start providing meals for people. Food insecurity is happening everywhere. You guys start supporting by providing meals. You're footing the bill for that yourself. You're racking up your credit card debts. That's obviously not sustainable. So then, how did you go about finding supporters to help you to continue with that side of Colombo Social?
Yeah. We tried to do it ourselves for as long. Like we didn't know the sheer volume of this when we did it, the sheer gravity and the sheer need in the community for food. So we just started donating food. I always go back to you'll hear what the root cause of everything is in the goodness that we do. And my mum, how she would talk to people and she would give food to people when they needed it. That was the way that she expressed her love. And we didn't have a lot of money at the time, but we did have food. So that's how the food movement started at the restaurant. People, Redfern called me and said, "Can you help us?" That was that real circular moment where the work that I did in the communities kind of came back in that way, and that's when we started donating food. And I remember 1,000 meals to like 2,000 meals to like 27 charity partners in 3 weeks. Food flying out, calls every day asking for more. And we didn't have time to engineer and process, map out this system because the world was just chaos at the time. Right, this is day one after COVID. So shut the restaurant down on Sunday, and we started this program on Tuesday. So on Tuesday we started donating food. So we just kind of winged it, and then there came a point where we were so deeply involved in the day to day, trying to figure it out, trying to navigate, police exemptions and food protocols and COVID protocols and distancing protocol, all this stuff. That we're like, oh shit, we're out of money. now what do we do? Because we have so many people needing this food. We met someone who a chick from Deputy, which is an incredible tech platform. He just gave us a boost in funding one day. He's like, "Hey mate, I've got X amount of money. There you go. You just keep focusing on what you do, and I'll take care of it for a while." And then we had a crowdfunding campaign that yielded that. And then since that day, that first day that we started doing the meal donation program, we've never stopped. We pump out 3,000 meals a week. We've donated 570,000 meals plus, and employed 189 people that would probably not have jobs or be on social benefits from that little decision that was made just then.
We'll be back with more from Sean Christie David after this short break.
So, Sean, you were talking about your staff earlier, the women that possibly might never have had jobs, or the other end of the spectrum where they corporate high flyers in their own home country, and then they come here and they can't get work. So I imagine the training and support of your staff is something that really goes hand in hand with the success of the business. So can you maybe just walk us through a little bit about how you approach training if someone's going to come to work at one of your businesses, and how do you think that helps them succeed in the future?
We're working on a really big program, which is the path of entrepreneurship. I think that migrant women have numerous barriers to employment, but then they also so disproportionately represented in business ownership. The levels of business ownership for some of the smartest, most capable, resilient people who I've met, they don't open their businesses, and there might be reasons for that I struggle with, because I'm like, you're so much smarter than we are. You're so much more community focused. You're so, when you educate women, life expectancy increases, community health outcomes increase, teen pregnancy decreases, literacy rates increasing dramatically, and that's just from the power of education of women. And that to me is a fascinating statistic. So as business owners, they also employ people and build social enterprises by default without even knowing it, and lift community outcomes. So our training module will be built towards business ownership, and we'll have mentoring programs for women that are keen to open their own businesses. But the foundations of training for us is really on the job expertise, and then the subsidiary things that not many business owners really have to deal with, but like English classes, all the way through to when you first start, it's how do you understand a pay slip? How does the Australian tax system work? It's complex for most of us to understand, but for people that have never had a job in this country, it's a weird tax system, and it's difficult to understand. What is superannuation? What does that mean? Why is now 11.5% of what I think I'm going to be earning? Where's that going? Like, why can't I get it now? Those are the things that we have to take people through. So we have financial literacy courses. We have, my brother who's a broker, looking at pathways to home ownership and talking about that stuff early, things like that, so that they understand the holistic nature of employment. I say my team is so smart and skilled that the taking of the tray of food or drink to a table is not ever going to be the problem. It's the articulation of things. A customer speaks in English, they process that in Dari or Ukrainian or whatever language that they process in their head. They might communicate to the head chef in that language as well. Then they go back and they talk to that customer in English. Like, there's so many different layers to that conversation that we don't understand that's actually happening. So it's fascinating to see that. So I think we train them on those nuances, the slang. I remember I saw one of my staff the other day. He said, "You beep beep," like two very explicit language. I'm like, yes, you're an Australian. You get it.
I think I know exactly what words they were.
You got the most Australian word possible. You've made it.
Yeah.
So those are the soft things. I obviously try not to teach them those words, but they do come out quite regularly. But those articulations of nuances of Australian culture, that can really help them the long term.
Can you share a story about an employee who has really thrived, at Colombo Social or any of your venues for that matter?
There's literally 189 stories of those. I'm trying to think of one person who will always be dear. Was one of the first ladies I ever employed. She was 18. She's like, I don't speak good English. I've got a list. I've got this. I've got that. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, fuck me, mate. You've travelled on a boat at the age of 9. You've set up life here. You've educated and got your sisters through schooling. You've been separated from your whole family besides 2 family members. No parents here. You can take a tray of food out to a table. She stayed with us for many, many years. She became the restaurant supervisor within like 6 months, which is a trajectory that no one really goes through. She got a university scholarship on the back end of that. She was promoted to the head of training. So all my new venues, she was going in and teaching all the new staff the exact same things I was talking about, with someone from lived experience. And now she's gone on to a job placement to work in the social sector and social impact space, because it's meant so much to her. So that's one of many, many stories of brilliance, intelligence, and community.
Is that one of the things that keeps you inspired? Because being an entrepreneur can be a tough gig. Being a social entrepreneur, probably even tougher. what is it that keeps you inspired, keeps you going to work every day? Is it those stories of the people that you're helping?
Yeah, it's definitely not IR laws or payroll.
Oh, we
Oh,
love
really?
those. What a
Everyone's
yay.
favourite things.
Oh my god, Della love Zero. No, it is. Like without the people, um, this place would just be a restaurant. And while it is just a restaurant in all ways, shapes, or forms, the magic happens when you see people develop, you see people grow, you see people promoted. You know the impact that you're having. Or when I go out to community and I see the people enjoying the meals that we donate, or hearing, the stories of success. And success is different to everybody, but their definition of success and being happy. I look at retention rate. We've got a 97% retention rate for people from marginalised communities. We have promotion rates for particularly women migrants moving up. So it's not just employment, but it's longer term careers, and knowing their families, and seeing like the kids now growing up with us as their community. That stuff's special. That stuff's special.
Wow, I hope any corporates that are sitting there kind of grappling about diversity, inclusion, improving outcomes for women, having more women on boards, investing in more female-led startups. I hope
Well, what they could do with their ESG budget.
What could they do?
Perhaps hand some money over.
I wonder.
Exactly.
There's a lot they can do. There's a lot. So for anybody who has a strong social mission or has a purpose, driving what they want to do in business, what advice would you give about just going about that?
Yeah, I heard some advice. Don't build I think it's like don't build a business on what you love doing or something like that. There's some weird concept that if you love something, you shouldn't do that as your job. I find that fascinating. I'm like, why wouldn't you do that with the most amount of time that you have to do? Like so many people are like, you should keep that as your hobby and make your work something else. Love what you do. Be inspired every day by what you do. Look at your future self and go, what would the world that I want to create be, and how do I do that today? Um, the returns that we receive will not be financial. That's okay, and the returns that we receive we may never even know. We may never know. It may never come to fruition, but there is a deep core. And the people that I feed 3,000 people a week. I don't know them. I don't need to know them. I know that it's making a difference. I know that each week that 100 staff members are having their lives improved. And that's enough for me to feel that. So I think it's aligning what you want from the world. And it doesn't have to be through people. It could be through the environment. It could be I don't know, First Nations communities and working with them, whatever it is. But think about what you would love to see, and do that and embed it in your day to day. Don't add it on later. We're now a B Corp, or we're now at this, or we're now at that, or we're now got a foundation. We set the foundation up from day one. We set our charitable purpose constitutionally. In our constitution, we've got deep social impact through it, not as a nice to have, because it's easy when you're making money to give a little bit, but it's hard when you're not making money to give a little bit. And I think once you build that, everyone says pay yourself first. My bookkeeper's like, you've got to pay yourself first. I'm like, I'll pay the community first. I'm all right. I have a family that I can go to. I know that if I go and stay at my mum's house, I'm fed. I know that I've got a car. Yes, 12 years old, but I still got a car. It's okay if I pay the community first, and I build that as a core ethos. Everybody that I employ, therefore, has that same ethos. Everybody that walks into the organisation, from a supplier through to a donor, through to a staff member who's running the restaurant, we all have the same alignment, and that alignment allows us to make decisions together collaboratively for the long term. And I think that you do that from the start, you can build something that you don't deviate from, and you've got a North Star that's deeply, embedded in culture, and that shapes your business forever. So that's my advice: is to think about what you want, think about the world you want, think about how your business can collaborate or be part of that, and then bed it in from startup phase.
It's clear that you and the businesses are making a big difference from the very get-go. But can we talk a little bit about the nitty-gritty of it? So can you explain for our listeners maybe a little bit more about the Plate It Forward program, for example?
Yeah, so we've got 3 or 4 different kind of streams to what we do. So one is the buy one for every customer that dines on our set menu, or in Kabul Social, for example, everybody they will donate 2 meals to the community, one in Sydney or one in that home country. So we support Ukraine, we support an orphanage in Ukraine with fresh food for kids who have been impacted by the war, so really healthy food. We work with organisations in Sri Lanka and Afghanistan to feed people there as well as running a 3,000 meal a week program for First Nations communities, those in social housing, those recovering from or experiencing homelessness and addiction. We feed them weekly here. There's also the training and employment and that real deep kind of soft wraparound support services for our staff of about 100 people. 90% of our staff are from communities that would otherwise be on social benefits. So there's that stream. We work in the juvenile detention program, juvenile detention system, running a cooking and kind of like life skills course with celebrity chefs, where we go and teach young people in the incarceration system better ways, applicable skills that they can use when they get out, job opportunities when they get out, as well as ways to ensure they don't reoffend and go back in, and trying to prevent recidivism as much as possible. And then it's the building of the community through the work that we do with other charities to provide that food, to get stickiness to their clients as well, to bring them in for their services that they provide.
That is such a good point, because I think some people who are launching a social enterprise think, oh, you know what, I have to do it all on my own. But it's actually these connections between your organization, another corporate, and maybe another organization. You just need a few like-minded people in different places to all network together.
Yeah, and that was the thing that we saw. So when I looked at the economics of what we could do, I broke it down into a real division of duties. The economies of scale that I get from making food en masse, with labour, with suppliers, with just the general power and time. If I make 3,000 meals a week, it costs the same as a small charity trying to pump out 200. It's the cost of your nurse or your support worker or your caseworker chopping sandwiches that no one that's not good for anybody. The caseworker can do more with their time by going out there and advocating in the legal system or find them housing and stuff like that, versus making sandwiches so that people come in and feel like they've got food. Also, the quality increases. So I said my role in this is to have no direct contact with people from the communities that we're feeding. Rather, we'll give the highest quality food if you can provide the best quality outcomes for them through the support services that you run. So I'll save you 10 hours a week of your very, very deeply experienced subject matter experts who can therefore go out there and do really good work. I'll just give you the food, you do it, you provide that. Therefore, we're getting this ecosystem that's where everybody's playing in their strengths. We don't have to, we're playing to our strengths with our food costs, we're playing to our strengths with our hospitality knowledge. You're playing to your strengths. I could never have the depth of experience with great social workers to have those conversations with people to get the right outcome. So if we both do our thing to the best level that we do, and I kick back there with food, therefore the underlying person is getting the best outcome, and that's what collaboration can do. And I think it was putting aside the ego and putting aside, I wish I could feel that. I don't probably have that joy of serving someone the food, but knowing that we can serve so many more people and they're getting such better outcomes that they need. That's how it should work. And I think when you look at when you look at your business and you're looking at what you're doing, it's what is your desired outcome and how do you get there? And it isn't just trying to do it all yourself. It's knowing what your business is, knowing what your expertise is. Your expertise might be, financial kind of management. So are you going into potentially talking to people around their long-term goals and, okay, let's get you to home ownership or car ownership, whatever it is? Or is it going to a charity or a large organization saying, hey, let's go under the books, let's go under the bonnet and look at your books and maybe we can manage your finances better so therefore you can do more. And that part that you're there can lead to long-term viability and success for an organization that can't afford to get a deep financial advisor or a CFO into their organization. So how are you doing this for that? And I think that's a very, very interesting way to look at community with you. I always think like the CEO shouldn't be painting a fence or mowing grass or boxing meals. The CEO should be going to the CEO and saying, if I'm going to give up a day as my volunteering day, why don't I give up a day of my expertise of 35 years of running large organizations? That will be way more valuable to your organization than this quick short-term dopamine fix that I'm going to get from feeling something, but not doing anything that anybody else can do.
Sean, I can't believe it, but I'm pretty sure we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful chatting with you today.
Huge thank you from me as well, because I mean, I know I can speak for listeners right now who've been listening to this wonderful conversation that they've got a lot out of it and are probably going to be wanting to pay a visit to one of your venues. And I really sincerely hope that by the time we go to air with this podcast, that everything is sorted with Kabul Social and things will be in a better place.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah. Well, if there's anyone in Sydney City that has a restaurant that we can move our brand into, hit us up. But I hope the beauty of that venue can exist somewhere because it's crucial for the city.
And if anybody is listening that wants to get in touch with you or just find out more, where can they get in touch? What's the best way?
Yeah, LinkedIn for either Played It Forward or Sean Christie David. Our social channels, Played It Forward on Instagram, the Kabul Social, Kiev Social, and Colombo Social, or just visit one of our venues. I'm in one of them every day, and you can just have a bit of a chat. I love to talk to customers that understand our journey and want to be part of it.
That's great. That's fantastic. Thank you to our listeners as well for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, 5 stars or naturally, or maybe 4.5 if you're a tough crowd and you didn't love it. And join us next time for more inspiring stories from Australia's finest entrepreneurs and influencers.
See you next time.